Mjolnir, but when it finally happened, it ended up being the most crowd-pleasing moment in Endgame. One of the biggest teases in the MCU happened at the end of Age of Ultron when Cap almost said, "Avengers!" But after 4 years of waiting, Steve Rogers finally completed the most iconic line in Marvel Comics.
Assemble.
So worth the wait. Turning to another iconic phrase, in the MCU, Hulk's smash was first said in the Battle of New York, which set up an amazing action sequence in the Avengers. But in Endgame, let's just say things were different. These are just the first three, but let me know which callback you want to see in the next video. Moment from Homecoming.
Activating instant kill.
No, I don't want to kill anybody.
Well, we finally got to see what instant kill looked like in Endgame's final battle, albeit with Peter's upgraded Iron Spider armor. Age of Ultron had a lot of Endgame foreshadowing, especially with Tony's vision, and one of the most notable things that we see is Cap's shield split in half, which came to fruition during his one-on-one fight with Thanos. In Thor: The Dark World, we saw Loki's impersonation of Cap for the first time on screen.
Costume's a bit much. So tight.
But in the MCU timeline, that actually wasn't Loki's first time, because when the Avengers went back to New York, we saw him impersonate Steve Rogers in front of the man himself.
On my way down to coordinate search and rescue. On my way down to coordinate search and rescue.
I mean, honestly.
And left. Come on!
Those were the first words that Steve ever said to Sam. And when all seemed lost in Endgame, it was Sam who was saying those words back to Steve.
On your left.
Now, speaking of Cap, remember this from Ant-Man and the Wasp?
It was a matter of national security that Cap needed help.
Cap?
It's what we call him.
Well, when Hope shared the battlefield with Steve Rogers, she finally came around to the nickname.
We're on it, Cap.
In Homecoming, Tony and Peter shared this awkward, definitely not a hug moment.
That's not a hug, I'm just grabbing the door for you. We're not there yet.
But their relationship finally got there when the two reunited in Endgame.
Oh, this is nice.
In Infinity War, Doctor Strange revealed that in 14,605 possible futures, they defeated Thanos only once. And though he couldn't tell him directly, Strange hinted to Tony that this was the 1 in 14 sequence in the MCU belongs to Peter Quill in the first Guardians movie. But when we revisited that scene in Endgame, it wasn't quite the same.
Come and get your love.
So he's an idiot.
Sticking with the Guardians, remember when Drax tried to kill the Obelisk in Volume 2? Well, he kept that same energy in Endgame's final battle. Back when they first met, Cap had some harsh words for Tony.
You're not the guy to make the sacrifice play. To lay down on a wire and let the other guy crawl over you.
By the end of the Avengers, he proved Cap wrong, but it wasn't until Endgame when he made the ultimate sacrifice play. And perhaps the sweetest callback comes from Tony's daughter Morgan.
What do you want?
Cheeseburgers.
Which of course is a reference to the first Ironman.
In captivity for 3 months, there are two things I want to do. I want an American cheeseburger.
That's enough of that.
Never got Spider-Man's name, just his borough.
Where you from?
Queens.
Brooklyn.
And years later, that was still the name that he was using when the two were fighting side by side.
Hey, Queens. Heads up.
When they first met, T'Challa had no time for introductions with Hawkeye.
I'm Clint. I don't care.
But in Endgame's final battle, the two were on a first-name basis.
Clint! Give it to me.
We all remember what Thor calls Rocket in Infinity War.
Thank you, sweet rabbit.
Well, it turns out he's not the only Asgardian who doesn't know the difference between rabbits and raccoons. When they first fought, Iron Man learned something about Thor's powers.
Power at 400% capacity.
How about that?
And by the time Endgame happened, Tony optimized his suit for that purpose. Famous catchphrase.
I can do this all day. I can do this all day.
I can do this all day.
He says it 4 times throughout the MCU, including Endgame, when it was feeling a little bit tired out, even for Cap.
I can do this all day.
Yeah, I know.
Now to the title itself, Avengers Endgame. Its most direct influence comes from Doctor Strange and Infinity War.
We're in the Endgame now.
But it was actually Tony who said it first back in Age of Ultron.
That up there, that's the Endgame.
Nat and Clint have a long history together well before the Avengers, and there's one mission in particular that keeps coming up.
It's like Budapest all over again.
You and I remember Budapest very differently.
A long way from Budapest.
And now for Howard the Duck. He appeared in both Guardians of the Galaxy movies, and believe it or not, he was also in Endgame, and the dude was packing heat. He had some advice for Steve before leaving to serve in World War II.
Don't do anything stupid until I get back.
How can I?
Taking all the stupid with you.
Fast forward to Endgame, and the two mirrored that same exchange before Steve went back in time.
Don't do anything stupid till I get back.
How can I? You're taking all this stupid with you.
The Russo brothers directed an iconic action scene with the elevator fight in Winter Soldier. They made a visual nod to that moment in Endgame, but this time 2 words spared Cap from another brawl.
Hell, I do.
So who's the strongest Avenger? Well, we all know who Thor would pick.
Voice activation required.
Banner.
Welcome, strongest Avenger.
What?
It was funny back in Ragnarok, but the sentiment took a sad turn in Endgame when the team was debating who should wear the gauntlet.
I'm the strongest Avenger, okay? So this responsibility falls upon me.
After crash landing in Tennessee in Iron Man 3, Tony got some unexpected help from a kid named Harley. And years later, at Tony's funeral, Harley was there to pay his respects. Prince is bringing back this iconic shot from the Avengers. Really, the only change here was the color correction to better match Endgame's tone. Another reused shot comes from the Dark World with Loki in his cell. If you notice, the only difference was adding Thor and Rocket sneaking by in the background. In Doctor Strange, the Ancient One pushed Strange's astral form out of his physical body. She later did the same to Bruce, and the filmmakers made sure to mirror that original shot. Scott's van comes with a unique horn. And in the middle of Endgame's battle, the corny sound signaled a turning point for the good guys.
Anyone see an ugly brown van out there?
In the Avengers, Tony suited up just in the nick of time after free-falling from Avengers Tower. And when he did the same in Endgame, the Mark 85 made things a little less stressful. To be continued learns just how commercial the Avengers brand became while he was on Sakaar.
Then Ben & Jerry's named a flavor after me, so?
Stark raving hazelnuts.
The Hulka burning fudge is our favorite.
That's a thing.
And in Endgame, you could see him enjoying his own Ben & Jerry's ice cream flavor. Now to Steve and Peggy. For Cap, he has a photo of Peggy in his compass, which was with him when he crashed into the Arctic. Meanwhile, for Peggy, she kept a photo of Steve that showed exactly what he looked like when they first met. But that's only the beginning. Take a listen to the song playing in this scene from The Winter Soldier.
Didn't know you were married.
It's what we hear when Steve and Peggy finally have their dance, and fittingly, it's called It's Been a Long, Long Time.
I might, even when this is all over, go dancing.
Asking a woman to dance always seems so terrifying. Figured I'd wait.
Then what are we waiting for?
Right partner.
And Ned's handshake. They do it throughout Homecoming, and it was heartwarming to see them do it again when they were reunited in Endgame. 5 years after the snap, we find that Tony and Pepper have a daughter named Morgan, a name which was first brought up by Tony when he was describing a dream he had in Infinity War.
We named him after your eccentric uncle. What was his name?
Right.
Morgan.
Now for arguably the MCU's most famous line.
I am Iron Man.
It's a sentence that launched the cinematic universe, and it's fittingly the one that ended Iron Man's story. During Tony's funeral, we see a gift that Pepper gave him at the end of the first Iron Man movie. And for the final callback, you have to wait until the very end of the credits. That, of course, is the sound of Tony building the Mark I. It's a moment audiences first saw 11 years before Endgame.